Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Personal reflections on shunning, and that is all they will be, my own reflections on shunning. Let me start with a personal anecdote. In the past, a relatively long time ago, I was the manager of the Baha'i Forum on America Online, which later became known as AOL. I was also the section leader for the Baha'i section on CompuServe. Now, at that time, there was a lot of tension. I think we were perhaps not as developed as a Baha'i community as we are now. There were a lot of misunderstandings of certain things. So I am certainly not trying to universalize from what I am about to say to the present, or certainly not to other people, even people who were around back at that time. But here is the anecdote. On America Online, I got an email from this one particular person. I don't even recall his name, but even if I did, I wouldn't mention it, obviously. He was upset that there were members of certain covenant breaker groups that were on the Baha'i Forum. For those of you who don't know what that means, a covenant breaker group is a Baha'i term, sometimes called a violator, uh, for people who were Baha'is, but then, for whatever reason, decided that they would split with the Baha'i faith and create their own sect or something like their own sect, basically trying to create some kind of division within the Baha'i community. After these people are counseled, the Universal House of Justice has the prerogative to remove those people from the Baha'i community. And then they are called covenant breakers. And Baha'is in general will shun them, including members of their own family, which can be very traumatic for those families. I have actually met a couple of people who were in that situation, but faced with the alternative, there really is no option. They have to do that. But I'm sure it is a very sad and very tragic situation to be placed under that particular kind of, you know, horrible, horrible context where one is forced to shun your husband, your father, your mother, somebody like that. Fortunately, I have never experienced that. Now, I was in touch at that time with the Universal House of Justice on a fairly regular basis, and they knew that there were these covenant breaker groups that were on, especially the Baha'i Forum on AOL. And they told me they had a perfect right to be there, which I was happy to hear. It's what I personally thought as well, as somebody who was a strong defender of human rights, but that I should not associate with them on a friendly basis, meaning having casual conversations with them, discussing the Baha'i faith with them, where they discuss their own particular beliefs with me. But in dealing with forum business, I had a perfect right and a responsibility even to associate with them, which is what I did. But I went beyond that. I protected them because there were, unfortunately, some people who did not want them there. So this email came from one such person. He said that he was going to go to my superior, person who ran all the forums on America Online, on AOL, and say that he wanted these people kicked off of the Baha'i Forum. I wrote back to him. I said, well, if you do that, you will not have my support. In retrospect, I thought that I should have been even stronger. I thought I should have said, if you do that, I will work against you. Because in fact, If he had chosen to do that, which as far as I know he did not, I would have worked against him as a strong supporter of human rights. Those people had a right to be there. This was not a Baha'i-owned forum. The forum was literally owned by AOL, by America Online, and these people had as much of a right to be there as I did, or that he did. But he did not see it that way, so he wanted to get them kicked out, kicked out of the forum. And I made it clear to him that I would not support him. I never heard back from him again, which I thought was most likely going to happen when he saw that he wouldn't have my support. I always had a very cordial relationship with these so-called covenant breaker groups. They were very nice to me. In fact, they were very nice in general. There is a tendency I have found among some Baha'is, certainly not all, to kind of demonize these people, to turn them into human animals in a negative sense. I mean, we are human animals, but I mean human beasts, that they are somehow subhuman, that they treat people miserably. Maybe they beat their children, I don't know, beat their wives, beat their husbands, go out and commit violent crimes. These are really, really evil people. Well, fact is that is not true. They are simply people with a different point of view, but it is different enough where they cannot be members of the Baha'i community. And so the result of that is that Baha'is in general will shun them, as will I. But because I ran the Baha'i Forum and I ran the Baha'i section on CompuServe, although we did not have anybody from those groups on CompuServe, but in principle, I would have used the same basic idea. I had to support their right to be there as much as I had to support the right of anybody else to be there as well. And that was the standard that I upheld for the entire time that I was there. That was the principle I followed. Certainly, there were some people who did not like what I was doing. That was clear to me. Did I care? No, I didn't care. I followed my conscience. I followed my moral compass, and it all, I think, worked out in the end. To do otherwise, to violate that, would literally be a violation of their human rights and especially their civil rights. And civil rights are a subsection of human rights. And I could not do that. I could not violate the human or civil rights of anybody. So I defended them to the end, even against other Baha'is who wanted to see them kicked out. I would not tolerate that. So they liked me. They would send me New Year's cards. They were really nice. I would go and read their messages on the forum, as well as the messages of Baha'is. They were not cruel to each other. They were polite, as you would expect ordinary human beings to be. They did not yell at each other. They did not come over and yell at members of the Baha'i faith either. They stayed where they were. They knew what the rules were, and they followed those rules. The Baha'is followed those rules as well. So it was basically one or two, I guess, attention seekers that were causing problems. But for the most part, there were no problems. The problems were imaginary. So is shunning only something that is done to covenant breakers? No. If you read the Baha'i primary sources, the Baha'i texts talk about shunning a variety of other people. For example, in my own life, I have shunned two people. Both of them were really bad. Were they Baha'is? No. Were they ever Baha'is? One was sort of, but not really. But they were not covenant breakers. They were just really, really bad people. They were evil. They were nasty. They were nasty to me, and they were nasty to other people too. In one case, it had to do with a drug addiction. In the other case, it had to do with bipolar disorder. Both of them are now deceased, so it doesn't matter anymore. But I did end up shunning them. Here's the major points I want to get across. Human rights. That has always been a concern for me. Say we are living at the time of the world order of Baha'u'llah, the golden age of the Baha'i faith, when human affairs are administered by Baha'i institutions. What do we do then with covenant breakers? Do we shun them? Do we turn them into a subcaste? Do we make them untouchables, people that cannot be associated with? Do we cast them out of civil society? To me, that would seem completely unconscionable. How could a person actually do that? So I reflected on it. Now, bear in mind, these are just my own personal thoughts. They are not a reflection of anything, as far as I know, in the Baha'i texts. They are simply a result of my own meditations on the subject. And I did think about it for a long time because it is a subject that concerned me. And not only me, I know a lot of other people have been concerned about that issue as well. The purpose of shunning is not to protect the shunned one from us. In other words, if I shun a covenant breaker, or if I shun my two late friends when they were not late, I am not trying to protect them from me. I am trying to protect me from them. My feeling is that at some point in the future, the Baha'i community will have gotten sufficiently advanced, sufficiently developed, that shunning will simply no longer be necessary. In other words, the covenant and the firmness in the covenant that Baha'is will have in the future will have become so strong that that very covenant will become, to use modern terminology, a kind of firewall, a firewall that will protect us from other people. So we will no longer need to shun those people. That is my own thought. Could I be wrong? Certainly I could be wrong, but I hope I'm not. Or if I am wrong, I hope that there is something else I am missing which would solve the problem as well. Because certainly you cannot have a society in which a certain segment of the population is cut off, made into the other, made into the marginalized population, because they disagree with the views of the majority. That would not be justice. And Baha'u'llah said, the best, beloved, of all things in my sight is justice. That would certainly not be in accordance with justice, in my view. And again, that's only my view of it. So you are free to disagree with me, obviously. That is just my opinion. If you do disagree with me, I would appreciate it if you would comment below this video and say so, and we can have a nice, friendly discussion on it and perhaps reach a new understanding that neither of us had ever thought about previously. For the time being, this has been Mark, by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.